Have you ever felt that time disappears while you're completely immersed in something you love to do? That your mind and body align in such a way that everything seems to flow effortlessly? Maybe you've experienced what many call the state of grace, but in science it has a name: flow. This sensation, described by athletes, artists, surgeons, and even monks, is not an esoteric mystery. It is a measurable experience, studied for decades, and perhaps the closest key modern psychology has found to lasting happiness. In this video, we will delve deeply into the concept of flow, uncovering its origins, secrets, and transformative potential, not just for your performance, but for your entire life. But to understand this revolutionary discovery, we first need to know the man behind the theory. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi was born in 1934 in Fiume, a city that is now part of Croatia, but at the time was part of the Kingdom of Italy. His childhood was marked by the scars of World War II. He lost family members, experienced forced relocations, and witnessed firsthand the collapse of social and emotional structures in Europe during conflict. In interviews, Mihaly says that from a young age he wondered, why are some people able to maintain hope and inner strength even amidst chaos, while others get lost in suffering? This question would follow him throughout his life. As a teenager, Mihaly migrated to Italy and then to the United States, where he entered the field of psychology. But unlike his contemporaries, he was not interested in mental disorders or what goes wrong in the human mind. His focus was different. What makes life worth living? Inspired by Viktor Frankl, Carl Jung, and Abraham Maslow, Mihaly dedicated his career to positive psychology, even before it was called that. He wanted to understand the ideal human experience, those hours when we lose track of time, feel energized and clear, and act with complete focus and pleasure, something that, to him, was not a luxury, but a basic psychological need. Mihaly became a professor at the University of Chicago and later at Claremont Graduate University. It was there that, over decades, he interviewed thousands of people: artists, athletes, scientists, shamans, workers, and gathered accounts of the most meaningful moments of their lives. Remarkably, he discovered that these accounts shared common patterns, regardless of the culture, profession, or age of the individuals. These extraordinary moments were described with words such as clarity, immersion, effortless, joy, loss of sense of time, deep sense of fulfillment. From this investigation, the theory of the flow state was born, one of the most important contributions of 20th century psychology. Mihaly published more than a dozen books, including the bestseller Flow, The Psychology of Optimal Experience, 1990, which became a reference in various fields: education, leadership, coaching, psychotherapy, and human development. His approach influenced generations of researchers and crossed borders, reaching the practices of major companies, alternative schools, Olympics, and even studies on spirituality and transcendence. In his own words, the path to happiness is not an easy pleasure, but in cultivating states of attention so deep that we transcend ourselves. Mihaly passed away in 2021, but his legacy continues to live on in every moment of intense concentration, in every activity that absorbs us, in every instant where we find meaning in doing. Now that we know the man behind the theory, we are ready to dive into the heart of flow. What exactly happens in the brain and body when we are in this state? What are the conditions that promote this experience? And how can we access it, not by chance, but intentionally? In the next part, we will deconstruct flow step by step and show how it can be the bridge between pleasure, excellence, and life purpose. The state of flow, or flow, is described as an experience of complete immersion in an activity. It is when we are so focused on what we are doing that time seems to disappear, distractions fade away, and we feel an almost perfect union between body and mind. It is not about superficial pleasure. Flow is a state of optimized consciousness. Imagine a painter who spends hours creating without noticing the clock, a surgeon performing a complex operation with absolute precision, a dancer on stage who seems not to think, just to be. These are classic manifestations of flow. According to Mihaly, there are 9 elements that characterize the flow experience. Not all need to be present at the same time, but the more of these elements are present, the more intense the state. 1. Balance between challenge and skill. The activity demands enough to avoid boredom, but is not so difficult as to cause anxiety. 2. Clear goals. We know what we want to achieve and how to proceed. 3. Immediate feedback. We receive continuous responses about our performance, whether from the environment, other people, or the activity itself. 4. Total focus on the task. Attention is fully directed to the present, as if the outside world disappears. 5. Loss of self-awareness. The ego dissolves. We stop worrying about judgments, appearance, or approval. 6. Distortion of time. Minutes can seem like hours, or hours can seem like seconds. 7. Control over action. We feel in command even in the face of complex challenges. 8. Autotelic experience. The activity is rewarding in itself. We do it because we love to do it, not for external reward. 9. Integration of consciousness. Body, mind, intention, and action become a continuous and coherent flow. What happens in the brain during flow? Neuroscientific research reveals that during flow, significant changes occur in brain activity. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, responsible for critical thinking and self-reflection, is temporarily reduced, a phenomenon called transient hypofrontality. Dopamine and endorphins are released, substances that increase pleasure, focus, and motivation. The brain operates with high energy efficiency, focusing all resources on the here and now. It's as if the mind enters a state of functional excellence, cutting out unnecessary noise and enhancing the sense of clarity and purpose. You might be wondering, are flow and meditation the same thing? Although both involve states of deep attention, flow differs from meditation in key aspects. 1. Meditation seeks the intentional emptiness of the mind, while flow is active immersion in a task. 2. In meditation, the goal is often non-doing. In flow, it is doing with mastery and pleasure. However, both share similar positive effects: reduced anxiety, mental clarity, sense of transcendence of the ego. Flow as a fertilizer for self-realization. Flow is not just a pleasant state. For Mihaly, it is one of the keys to human flourishing. When we experience flow frequently, we boost our self-esteem, develop skills, connect with the present, and become more resilient. This state creates a bridge between what we do and who we truly are. It is where Ikigai begins to emerge, when what we do with pleasure becomes an expression of our true selves. Now that we understand what flow is, we are ready for the next step: how to cultivate these experiences in everyday life. How can we develop habits that more often lead us to this state of silent excellence? Now let's explore how to consciously access flow in different contexts, from work to art, from sports to daily life. Flow is this state of complete immersion, heightened performance, and deep pleasure. The inevitable question is, how can I enter flow more often? Fortunately, Mihaly identified conditions and strategies that promote entering this state. And the good news is, flow does not depend on innate talent or genius. It can be cultivated, trained, and incorporated into your routine. Find the balance point between challenge and skill. This is the heart of flow, a task that challenges you enough to maintain focus, but not so difficult that it causes frustration, nor so easy that it causes boredom. If the challenge is much greater than your current skill, you become anxious. If it is much smaller, you fall into apathy. Flow happens on the edge of the possible. You stretch yourself, but don't break. For example, an intermediate musician trying a song slightly outside their comfort zone, or a programmer solving a technical problem with logic that requires full concentration. Eliminate distractions. Flow requires full attention. Every time you get distracted, you fall out of the flow state. and it takes precious minutes to return. Best practices: turn off notifications and put your phone on airplane mode. Create uninterrupted blocks of time, Pomodoro technique, for example. Choose a conducive environment, quiet, organized, and with the necessary resources at hand. Flow is the opposite of multitasking. It is born in silence and flourishes in focus. Have clear goals. Your brain needs direction to enter flow. You don't need a grand goal, but rather to know what you're doing and why. When starting an activity, ask yourself, what is my goal here? How will I know I am making progress? This clarity helps the mind engage fully. Seek immediate feedback. Flow is sustained by constant responses from the environment. This allows you to adjust your action in real time without leaving the task. A painter sees the color they just applied and decides the next stroke. A player perceives the opponent's move and responds intuitively. A writer feels the sentence flowing and continues at the same rhythm. The clearer the activity's feedback, the easier it is to stay in flow. Engage in autotelic activities. Autotelic activities are those whose value lies not in the outcome, but in the act itself. You do it because you love to do it, because the process itself is the reward. These activities are the most common pathways to flow. Identify which ones are for you. They could be writing, playing an instrument, cooking, playing chess, climbing, painting, programming, moving, meditation. Create a ritual to enter flow. High-performing people tend to develop simple yet powerful rituals that signal to the brain that it's time to focus. Tidy up the desk, prepare a coffee, take a deep breath 3 times, repeat a mantra, put on headphones with a specific playlist. For example, writers like Haruki Murakami and Maya Angelou have created almost sacred habits to activate concentration. These rituals condition the mind to enter the flow mode. Flow does not depend on a spontaneous emotional state. It can be trained with consistency. The more you expose yourself to the challenge zone, eliminate distractions, and respect your immersion rhythm, the easier it becomes to access flow. It's like a mental muscle that strengthens over time. You don't need to be an Olympic athlete or a renowned artist to live in flow. Get inspired by these examples. A gardener pruning trees with full presence. A cook preparing a recipe with pleasure and attention to detail. A mother playing with her child wholeheartedly. A professional focused on a presentation with purpose and clarity. Excellence is not in what you do, but in how you do it. In different contexts, we can practice flow. In education, students can enter flow when challenges are well calibrated and the content is meaningful. At work, leaders who promote autonomy, purpose, and clear goals increase the frequency of flow in their teams. In sports and art, environments naturally conducive to flow when there is passion, technique, and freedom. Contemplative practices and intense rituals can also generate transcendent flow states. You don't need to wait for flow to arrive. You can create the conditions for it to flourish. Now let's delve into the practical applications of flow in work, art, spiritual life, and human relationships. Let's see how this state can transform not just isolated moments, but our entire life journey. Flow theory is not just an academic curiosity or an experience reserved for great artists and elite athletes. It is deeply practical, accessible, and transformative. When flow becomes part of your daily life, life ceases to be a sequence of tasks and obligations and becomes a journey of engagement, growth, and fulfillment. In this section, we will explore how the state of flow manifests in 4 fundamental spheres: work, art, spirituality, and human relationships. Most people spend more than half of their waking lives working. Therefore, the work environment is perhaps the most urgent area for the conscious application of flow. How can flow manifest at work? Solving complex problems with full concentration. Creating something new with freedom and responsibility. Feeling useful, engaged, and challenged at the same time. Favorable conditions, clear goals, frequent feedback. Autonomy, purposeful tasks, creative freedom, and confidence. Companies like Google, Spotify, and IDEO already use flow principles to increase engagement and innovation. Working in flow doesn't mean working more, it means working with presence and purpose. Art is one of the most fertile territories for flow, not only because it involves personal expression, but because it forces the mind to align with the present moment. How flow appears in art: painters who lose track of time while composing, writers who get into the rhythm of the narrative, musicians who seem to channel something greater than themselves. Practical tip: create a ritualized creative space. Repeating certain actions, music, light, scent, tools, helps the brain enter the flow state more quickly. Art in flow is not made to please, it is made to exist as an extension of the soul. In Eastern traditions, altered states of consciousness, such as samadhi, satori, or nirvana, share similarities with flow: loss of sense of time, dissolution of the ego, clarity of presence, union between action and intention, practices that promote spiritual flow, active meditation, such as mindful walking or yoga, chanting mantras, rituals with focus and clear intention, ceremonies with rhythm, music, and repetition. Flow is a modern way of experiencing the sacred through action. Yes, it is also possible to live flow in relationships. Moments of deep connection with another person, in sincere conversations, in a joint project, in dance, or even in silence, can generate shared immersion states. How to activate flow in relationships: be fully present with the other. Listen with genuine attention. Engage in cooperative experiences, cooking together, solving something, creating something. Suspend judgment and ego temporarily. Love is the flow between two. Flow. When we engage in a relationship with attention, challenge, and presence, it becomes a transformative experience. Mihaly argued that the goal is not just to access flow occasionally, but to live in a way that creates the conditions for it to happen frequently. This requires self-awareness, conscious choices, routine planning, creating conducive environments, developing skills intentionally. When this happens, flow ceases to be a rare state and becomes a way of being. Flow is the territory where what you love, what you do well, what is useful to the world, and what sustains you naturally intersect. This intersection is Ikigai, the meaning that emerges from action with purpose, pleasure, and mastery. Flow is the experience. Ikigai is the path. When you enter flow, doing what you love, and the world benefits from it, you are at the center of your purpose. Flow doesn't have to be rare or unreachable. It can be in the way you start your day, how you handle small tasks, how you engage in a conversation, or how you express what you carry inside. Let's explore the critiques, limitations, and expansions of Csikszentmihalyi's theory to understand how the concept has evolved, how it connects with other approaches, and how it can be integrated even more deeply into modern life. Although it is one of the most influential contributions of positive psychology, the theory of flow is not immune to criticism or revisions. Next, we will explore the main limitations, objections, and updates that have emerged over the past decades. One recurring criticism is that flow is more accessible to those who have time, autonomy, and resources to choose their activities. People in contexts of social vulnerability, exhausting journeys, or mechanical work would have fewer opportunities to experience this ideal state of consciousness. How to enter flow in a repetitive and poorly paid job. How to experience flow when hungry, afraid, or mentally exhausted. Although Mihaly acknowledged these barriers, he also argued that any activity, even the simplest ones, can contain elements of flow, if there is intention, focus, and space for improvement. Some critics warn that flow, in certain circumstances, can become an escape from reality. Gamers who play for 12 consecutive hours, artists who neglect their relationships to immerse themselves in creation, workers who become addicted to productivity without reflection. Flow, like any altered state, can be misdirected. Therefore, it should be accompanied by self-awareness, purpose, and balance. Flow is healthy when it connects a person to life, and not when it disconnects them from it. The classic theory of flow does not delve into emotions such as sadness, grief, guilt, or psychic shadow, central themes for more existential or Jungian psychologies. In other words, flow may not be applicable or desirable at all times in life. How to seek flow during mourning, how to integrate flow with processes of pain and deconstruction. These are still little explored questions which have opened space for complementary studies such as compassion psychology, acceptance therapies, applied spirituality. In the 21st century, hyperconnectivity, the culture of infinite scrolling, and dopamine addiction have altered our way of paying attention. Today, it is much more difficult to maintain deep focus for long periods. Flow requires sustained concentration, but we are immersed in environments that foster constant distractions. The new frontier of positive psychology is teaching how to reclaim focus as a daily practice. Ironically, the same technologies that disperse attention can also be used to train focus and mindfulness when used consciously. Can the pursuit of flow become obsessive? Yes. When flow is treated as an absolute ideal, there can be pressure to be always in flow, which leads to frustration and excessive self-demand. Not every moment in life needs to be intense, productive, or inspired. The beauty of existence also lies in pauses, creative emptiness, and silent receptivity. Therefore, contemporary authors suggest a balance between flow, inspired action, mindfulness, receptive presence, shadow work, emotional integration, and restoration, conscious rest. Despite criticisms, the concept of flow remains alive, relevant, and evolving. In recent years, significant developments have emerged. Team flow studies show that groups can also enter collective flow. For example, sports teams, bands, startups, and intense brainstorming. This state is more powerful than individual flow because it activates social and neural synchronies. Neuroflow research in neuroscience has identified brain patterns associated with flow, including alpha and theta waves, hypofrontality, and regulated dopamine. This opens doors for neurotechnological training, such as neurofeedback and guided meditation. Flow and spirituality. Zen monks, Sufi masters, and yogis describe altered states similar to flow. Modern spirituality has incorporated these insights into practices such as active meditation, breathing work, rituals of focus, and devotion. Perhaps the greatest legacy of flow is to reorient our culture from distraction to presence. In a world that values speed, consumption, and performance, flow invites us to slow down and truly immerse ourselves in experiences that make us feel alive. Flow is the antidote to superficiality. It is the return to experience as a path to wisdom. Flow is not a panacea, but it is a powerful bridge between science, art, spirituality, and everyday life. When understood deeply and used consciously, it transforms from a psychological concept into a tool for existential transformation. So, what do we learn from Mihaly and the theory of flow? How does flow connect with the pursuit of Ikigai, inner fulfillment, and a meaningful life? How to create a routine based not only on goals, but on meaningful experiences. Throughout this journey, we delved into one of the most inspiring discoveries of modern psychology, the state of flow. We saw that flow is not just about performance, it's about presence, integration, and meaning. It's about living so engaged that life itself becomes meaningful, not because we are always happy, but because we are connected with what we do, who we are, and the present moment. Mihaly didn't leave us with just a theory. He offered us a map so we could find the experiences that make us feel alive. An invitation to pay attention to what absorbs us, what challenges us, what invites us to grow with pleasure and focus. Throughout his life, Mihaly sought to answer the question, what makes life worth living? And he found that answer within real human experiences, not in distant dreams, but here and now. Abraham Maslow spoke of self-actualization as the top of the pyramid, the point where we become what we are meant to be. Mihaly complements this view. It's not about reaching some place. It's about living in such a way that every step is worthwhile. Flow is the rhythm of self-actualization, the music that plays when we do what we love with dedication and feel that we belong to it. Flow connects us with action. Ikigai connects us with purpose. When the two unite, a way of living is born in which what we do has meaning, what we feel has depth, and time becomes more than just chronology. It becomes lived fullness. Ikigai is the reason for living. Flow is the way of living. You don't need to change careers or become a monk. The path begins with small conscious choices. Which activities absorb me? What can I do today with more presence? How can I challenge myself with lightness? What would I do, even without reward, just for the pleasure of doing? These questions are seeds of flow, and by cultivating them, you draw closer to yourself, your essence, your purpose. Ultimately, flow teaches us to honor life in the now. Every moment in flow is a silent offering to the sacredness of existence. It's when we stop just passing time and start inhabiting time. Now that you understand what flow is, I invite you to make it part of your journey. Notice what delights you. Pay attention to what makes time disappear. Feed your curiosity, your focus, your art. And if you want to deepen this journey, subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share this video with those who are also seeking more than productivity. They are seeking meaning, depth, and true fulfillment. Because here, on the path of self-realization, we are not chasing time. We are learning to flow with it. This is the legacy of Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and perhaps the beginning of a new chapter in your own story. Live with flow, live with soul, live with Ikigai.